President Biden made his first visit since taking office to the U.S. southern border on Sunday. And ahead of his visit, he announced new restrictions as well as a policy expansion for migrants trying to enter the U.S.
So let's bring in North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, who just returned from the border as well. Senator, thank you so much for joining us today. You were part of a bipartisan delegation of lawmakers that went to visit the southern border with the president. So what did you see when you were there?
Yeah, well, we were on two separate trips. I think the president was there on Sunday. We had a bipartisan group of 8 senators go on Monday and Tuesday. We were down in El Paso, briefly in New Mexico, and then in the Yuma sector. And what we saw was a border that's out of control, a need to secure the border, to provide more support for Border Patrol, and to really insist on policies that provide a legal, safe, orderly, and humane process for people trying to enter this country.
And Senator, you were able to talk to local lawmakers, Border Patrol, and those on the front lines of the migrant crisis. What resources do these communities say they need to deal with the growing influx of migrants?
It's really a combination. First, the reason, and I think my Democratic colleagues understand that we need to provide structure so that we can have an orderly flow across the border. With more than half of Border Patrol not on the line, doing other jobs because of the sheer numbers. I mean, working in processing facilities, driving buses, providing daycare, literally in some cases. We have to get those who are protecting the integrity of the border back on the line. But it's also fair to say that there are non-governmental organizations, community support organizations that also need resources while we try to figure out how we reduce future flows. I think that my Democratic colleagues went away with a different impression of why we need structures, why we need to force the issue of presenting yourself at legal ports of entry. And I'm hopeful we can go back to Washington and implement policies that address all of these issues.
Well, let's talk policy, because President Biden announced both new restrictions on migrants and a policy expansion that encourages migrants to apply for asylum legally, which in so many words is essentially expanding the controversial Trump-era border restriction known as Title 42. So what is your response to the president's new restrictions?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, but that by itself is not going to reduce the future flows. In the Yuma sector that we visited 3 years ago, 8,000 people crossed through a section of about 7 miles that does not have any sort of border control measures. About 200,000 passed through a 10-foot gate last year. The year before, it was almost 200,000. The year before that, in the Trump administration, it was 8,000. So I think that we need to learn what we did right, maybe what we did wrong during the Trump era, but we need to go back and revisit these policies. We also need to have the American people understand what asylum means. Our international treaties mean that we want to provide a safe haven for people who are leaving dangerous countries. But when you see 5,000 Russians come across the entry point that I referred to, 5,000 in the last year, you have to believe that in their transit to Mexico that they passed through countries where they could have sought asylum. That's what asylum means. Get them out of a dangerous situation into a country that can provide them safe haven. When you're paying, when on average, and we saw in El Paso, 2 Chinese nationals were apprehended by border police. Chinese nationals pay on the average about $35,000 to drug cartels, to human trafficking cartels to get to the United States. There are a number of countries in that area of the world that they could have sought asylum. Those are the abuses that we have to address.
Well, Senator, you represent the state of North Carolina. Many Americans who don't live in border states might not feel these issues are pressing, but how does immigration policy affect all of us? What do you say to the people who are saying, why should I care?
So we're all feeling it. We're feeling it in different ways. We're seeing increased gang activity. Now, keep in mind, the vast majority of these people just want to come to this country for a better life. But there are many, the so-called gotaways, tens of thousands last year, who are trying to evade apprehension. It defies logic. If you know that if you come to this country and you present yourself to a Border Patrol agent, that you're likely to be released into the United States within a matter of days or a week, why on earth would you evade apprehension unless there was a malign purpose for your reasons to come into this country? Maybe not all of them, but a good number of them. And we're seeing it in terms of less safe communities. And most of those communities are minority communities, the ethnic minorities that the people who cross the border tend to gravitate towards.
And a thank you to Senator Tillis for joining us today talking about the border crisis.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Lots of great stuff here. So go on, click the subscribe button right over here to get more of awesome videos and content from GMA every day, anytime. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the morning on GMA.